Okay, how about now? Can you hear us okay?
Hold on, hold on.
No. I'm talking to my friends. I think the most taken care of kids.
So you're muted. You're on mute.
Hello, this is Annie Marshall, City of Avalon.
Really? Oh my God!
You told me, and I
Okay.
did.
Yeah. Okay. Good. 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 Good.
I just want to let you know I did.
Yeah.
This.
One of the members gives her location.
Wow, it is empty in here.
Okay, we'll be starting in a minute. Just giving everyone a heads up. Okay, I asked the members of the CEHD committee who are calling in by phone to identify themselves before we call the meeting to order. Are there any members calling in by phone? Okay, go ahead.
Ann Marshall, City of Avalon.
Aquanetta Warren from Fontana.
Clerk,
Kathleen Kelly currently by phone until I solve some connectivity issues.
Clerk, do you have the phone numbers for the people, the members who are calling in by phone? Do they need to identify their phone numbers as well? Annie Marshall, can you please let us know what phone number you're on? The last 4 digits. Annie Marshall, can you let us know the last 4 digits of your phone number, please?
2935.
Do we have a quorum, clerk? Want to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. This is Aquanetta Warren from Fontana. I'm actually on the Zoom.
Okay,
Not
we
the
got
phone.
you. Okay, we got
Okay.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, we're going to call this meeting of the CEHD Committee to order. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance by the Vice Chair, David Shapiro.
Please stand, face the flag of our country after July 4th, especially. Place the right hand over your heart and join together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, David. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Thursday, July 6, 2023. Welcome to the members. Welcome to those members who are joining us today in person at SCAG's Los Angeles offices. We are holding this meeting in compliance with Brown Act rules relating to telephonic and video conference meetings. SCAG offices are open for members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for providing public comment have been provided in advance and are also included in the agenda packet. Just a reminder, to reduce background noise, please ensure that your microphone is muted when not in use. I will now open the public comment period of the meeting. This is the time for members of the public to offer comment for matters that are within SCAG's jurisdiction, but are not listed on the agenda. Staff, have we received any written public comments after the deadline of 5 p.m. on Wednesday, July 5, 2023?
Mr. Chair, I can confirm we have not received any written comment before or after the deadline of July 5th.
Thank you, Yvette. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any members of the public in person or virtually.
Thank you, Yvette. I will now close the public comment period for matters not listed on the agenda. Review and prioritize agenda items. Do any of the members of the committee want to review and prioritize any of the agenda items? Seeing none, I would like to remind everyone to unmute your phone before speaking and state your name during deliberations and whether making a motion or offering a second. And for those who have joined by phone, press *6 to mute and unmute your phone. Consent calendar. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, I see no members of the public either in person or on Zoom.
Thank you, Yvette. Before asking for a motion to move the consent calendar, to approve the consent calendar, I wanted to call your attention. Your attention to item number 2 under the consent calendar and remind the members that staff prepares an annual outlook for the committee's agenda items, which is currently being updated for the fiscal year 23-24 based on our EAC retreat last week. Vice Chair David Shapiro and I will have further discussions with the staff in the late summer to refine and discuss priorities for the annual outlook as we finalize agendas for the fall. The outlook will be a standing item, a standing receive and file item on our agenda, and members are always welcome to ask for the item to be pulled if at any point you want to have more discussion on future agenda items. Would any of the members of the committee like to pull any of the items from the consent calendar?
I'll move the
Mr. Chair, I'm
consent
not seeing it.
calendar.
Who was that? Hi,
Bucknam.
Margaret. Oh, who was that?
It was Wendy Bucknam.
Oh, hi, Wendy. Thank you.
I'll second it, Wendy. I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion by Wendy Bucknam and a second by Margaret Finley to approve the consent calendar. Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you. This is for the consent calendar. Cindy Allen,
Aye.
Valerie Amezcua, Gary Boyer,
Yes.
Wendy Bucknam,
Yes.
Tanya Doby,
Yes.
Deborah Dorst Parada, Keith Ike, Rose Espinosa,
Yes.
Wayman Furman,
Yes.
Margaret Finley,
Yes.
Claudia Frometta, John Gilbert,
Yes.
Camilo Garcia,
Madam Clerk,
Mark
I'm
Hick-
abstaining since I'm not at the posted location.
thank you. And Camilo Garcia. You can't abstain, can't participate. Okay. Thank you. Mark Henderson,
I'm not voting today. I'm not at the posted location.
thank you. Cecilia Hop,
Yes.
one moment, please. Linda Johnson,
Here.
Kathleen Kelly,
Yes.
Tammy Kim, Lauren Kleiman,
Yes.
Sorry, Tammy's here. It was unmuting.
Hi,
Sorry.
Mayor Ashley Aiken and Vice Mayor Tammy Kim are at the posted Irvine location.
thank you. Ashley Akin, may I get your
Aye.
vote for the consent calendar? Thank you.
And Vice Mayor Kim,
Noted. Jed Liano,
Yes.
Annie Marshall,
Yes.
Andrew Macio, Casey McKeon,
Yes.
John Mirish,
Yes.
Joseph Morabito,
Yes.
George Nava, Maricela Nava,
Yes.
Ariel Pay, Misty Perez,
Yes.
Gabriel Reyes, Sylvia Robles, Sunny Santinez, Andrew Sorega, Nick Schultz,
Yes.
David Shapiro,
Yes.
Becky Shevlin,
Yes.
Mary Solorio, Helen Tran, Gwinnett Warren,
Yes.
Tony Wu,
Yes.
Frank Yokoyama,
Yes.
and Frank Zaranian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Rhodes, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Rocky Rhodes,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, the consent calendar passes with 31 yes votes, 0 no votes, and no abstentions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Information items. Number 7, item number 7, Connect SoCal 2024 Outreach Update. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, I can confirm that there are no members of the public, either in person or virtually, that want to speak to this item.
Thank you, Yvette. This is an information item. This past spring, SCAG conducted outreach to gather input for Connect SoCal 2024. This is an important part of the plan development process to ensure that feedback from people across the region is incorporated into the draft plan to be released this fall. Senior Regional Planner Camille Guariba will be providing an update on the outreach activities and findings. I now turn it over to Camille Guariba. Could you turn your mic on, please?
All right, I think my mic's on. First, we'd like to play an animated video that we created for the digital outreach promotion, and then I'll get into the update.
What would you like to see for Southern California by 2050? Cleaner air, less congestion, more transit, housing, and better jobs? A region that works better and is fairer and safer for all of us? What if we told you it's possible? And it all starts with you. Connect SoCal is Southern California's long-range regional plan. This plan projects a vision for the future that responds to your needs. Through Connect SoCal, residents like you have a unique opportunity to have your voice heard in the process, to guide how our communities evolve. Connect SoCal meets federal and state requirements for infrastructure and sustainability planning and is led by the Southern California Association of Governments, your regional planning organization. SCAG leads the region. Our role is to outline a unified vision for achieving our region's air quality, transportation, and housing goals. We support collaboration and planning among local governments to address key issues within Southern California, serving nearly 19 million residents. We identify new ideas and innovative strategies for a brighter future. Through Connect SoCal, we create a guide to shape how Southern California communities work together in achieving our regional goals. We fund local projects, help local governments implement new plans, advocate for policies and funding, and collect data and analysis. And we want to hear from you. Will you be a part of creating a better future for Southern California? How can you be sure your voice is heard? Go to connectsocal.org to take the survey. You can also learn more about our process and ways to get involved in your area. Join us in having a positive impact on the future of our region for generations to come.
So through the outreach effort, SCAG conducted 20 in-person workshops and 7 virtual workshops, hosted 20 pop-up and street team engagement, and partnered with 15 community-based organizations. We also had a very robust digital and traditional advertising campaign. And all those activities resulted in the collection and feedback from over 3,600 people. Next, I'll share what we heard through the outreach. As previously mentioned, we heard from over 3,600 people through the survey. Of the choices provided for the question regarding regional challenges, the top 3 chosen by those who responded were 1, a shortage of affordable and diverse housing options, 2, limited reliable travel options besides driving to everyday destinations, and 3, climate change impacts. We also asked about their vision for the region in 2050, and the top 3 chosen answers for that question were a healthy place for all people to live in, prosperous with economic opportunity for all residents, and safe for all modes of travel. The comments received at the public workshop paralleled many of these similar themes identified through the survey, such as concerns over housing affordability, transit reliability, and safety. And while the feedback received through the community partnership program generally agreed with the feedback received through the survey and workshops, the residents who were reached through our 15 community-based organizations offered nuanced viewpoints, priorities, and concerns based on their experiences. And in their feedback, they highlighted the need to focus on historically disinvested areas, as well as highlight the needs for protections for residents, small businesses at risk of displacement, and then a desire for continued engagement after the plan is adopted, with follow-ups regarding the implementation of strategies and performance metrics of how well those strategies are helping the region. And so what are the next steps with this feedback we received? We've updated the vision and goals based on that feedback. Staff is actively preparing the draft plan, which is to be released this fall, and is incorporating that feedback into the draft strategies and the technical reports. And you will see that all in that draft to be released in October. And I'm glad to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Camille. Before I entertain comments from members of the CEHD committee, I just wanted to ask, are there any upcoming workshops?
No, we've completed the workshops already.
Okay. And is that video, promotional video on the SCAG website?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Okay, I will now entertain comments from members of the CEHD committee. Are there any in-person members who would like to comment? Okay, I call on Honorable Gary Boyer.
Just curious, is there a time frame for what the next steps are going to be? Is that laid out yet?
Yes, so right now we're taking the feedback we received and incorporating that feedback into the draft plan, making changes to the existing drafts we have of the policies and the implementation strategies, as well as the various technical reports that we have for the plan. And then those are to be released in October.
Okay, thank you.
Rocky Rhodes, please.
Hi, Camille. Great work on the outreach and the program. I was able to attend one of the in-person events in Camarillo. I was curious about what your perceptions of the effectiveness of this outreach actually were. We got some results, but 3,600 surveys returned I don't know if that's a statistically relevant number of responses for the size of the area that we're actually working to get. I also couldn't find what our dollars spent were on getting the responses But so at 3,600, we're basically spending $275. If we're spending $1 million, it's $275 for every response. I don't know how many millions we spent on getting that.
Yeah, I don't have the exact outreach budget number, but we could get back to you on that. And then in regard to the 3,600 respondents, that was comparable to how many survey respondents we received for the 2020 plan as well.
And did we learn anything new? Was there anything earth shattering that those 3,600 respondents said, oh, we didn't think about this?
Yeah, there was one piece of feedback, the economic opportunities feedback we received, where that was something that people were interested in. We didn't have that kind of stated in our vision, and so we wanted to elevate that concept, and so that has created a change in the way we have drafted our goals and vision statement.
Okay.
And if I may, this is Elizabeth Carvajal, Deputy Director of Planning. I want to also augment that beyond the stakeholder engagement that Camille highlighted, we also have had several presentations to the different policy committees, to the regional council, to the sub-regional directors, to the county transportation commissions. And so she's highlighting specifically the more community level outreach, but I want to highlight that beyond that, there was a lot of vetting with many of you at the policy committee level with regional council and many of our other partners. So there's a lot of engagement that has helped inform the process and the future draft release also. Thank you.
So looking to the members who have questions, I call on John Mirish.
Thanks so much, Chair. Actually, a couple of questions, but the first one is I'm just wondering how much does a video like the one that they did, how much does it cost? I'm guessing it's not a lot, but I'm wondering what something like that costs these days, if anyone knows.
We can get back to you with, as mentioned, with the budget numbers.
Okay.
If the committee is interested in how much was spent on outreach.
Well, not just outreach specifically, there's a video, right, which I thought was kind of cool, and I'm guessing it's cheap. It would be interesting to know. Maybe that's something we should be considering, if it's not expensive, doing in the future, and maybe getting some input on it. But to the meat of it, I do want to point out that, and someone mentioned last time that I keep saying this over and over, but I will again, because it wasn't addressed, the issue of work from home. What are people's attitudes? You talked about people having certain employment preferences, but what is their preference when it comes to work from home? What are their housing preferences? I don't believe that we've asked them that if they had a choice, what kind of accommodations would they choose for themselves? And I think it's important, if we didn't ask those questions, that we specifically in our report say that we did not address these issues and we did not attempt to, and maybe in the future we should. And my last point is, I will say that I know you talked about climate change, and I would like for us to look at not just climate change, but climate change is a symptom of Earth overshoot, of ecological overshoot, which is this year, for example, Earth Overshoot Day is in less than a month. It's on August 2nd. And Earth Overshoot Day actually marks the date when humanity's demand for ecological resources and services in a given year exceeds what the planet can regenerate in that year. So this is a larger, and of that, as said, climate change is a subset, it's a symptom of that. And we should, I hope, going forward, we can look at the bigger picture. Because as said, already on August 2nd this year, the planet as a whole, not just this country, will have used all of the resources that the planet can regenerate. And I think that's relevant, and I would love to see us incorporate it into the future. Aside from that, thanks so much for the presentation, and look forward to continuing with the work. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll respond to one piece of your comment. We do have the full summary of responses as an attachment to the staff report. And one of the questions is travel mode preferences. And so we do ask, like, for different types of activities, what is your preference? And work from home is one of the options that people could select, as well as transit, driving, et cetera. So if you're curious about those responses, that's in the attachment.
Well, I would suggest that maybe you could look at that as a substitute for transit, but also when you're looking at employment and what kind of employment people prefer, I would suggest it's also not just a factor of transit, but it's also directly related to the kind of employment people prefer. And maybe, as said, in the future, it's great that it was incorporated in that. It can be incorporated into that, as well as then asking people, because if we're looking at planning for housing and other things, what's the kind of housing that, if they had their choice, people would prefer for themselves? So just a suggestion going forward. And again, thank you.
Thank you. I also was glad to see the promotional video, and I was thinking that, including because we had some members who were not able to attend the meeting today, staff, can you please email the link to the promotional video to the CEHD committee members? And John, somebody wanted to know what team your hat stands for.
Okay. Little bit obscure. It is the Geelong Cats of the Australian rules, of the AFL, the Australian Rules Football League, a team of which I've been proudly a member for over 10 years. So for all of you who have not seen or experienced Australian rules football, I say this as a fan of all sports. It's great. So have a look at it.
Thank you. We'll be calling next on. All right. We'll be calling on first Wendy Bucknam, then Kathleen Kelly, and then I think we have a question from either Sunny Santa Ynez or Ariel Pay. Right? One of you two or both of you? From Sunny Santa Ynez. Okay. So first, Wendy Bucknam.
Hi, thank you so much. And staff, thank you for the report and the great outreach. A couple of my questions that I was going to ask were previously asked, but I do want to emphasize as we get input back, I agree with John on the work from home information and looking at that closely. I think that's important. And then of course the fact that we're weaving in economic data that's come back and incorporating that in our plan, I think is very important. So I don't have any further questions after the questions were already addressed, and just want to compliment you on the good work that you've done here.
Thank you, Wendy. Kathleen Kelly.
Yes, it really caught my attention that folks identified fear of displacement as a key issue. And of course, it is a key issue because many of the neighborhoods we are encouraged to identify for greater density are older neighborhoods with more affordable housing. Not quote unquote affordable housing, but market rate housing at more affordable price points. So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves since the full proposed changes will be before us in the fall. But I'm curious to know if you have found some ways to tackle what I view as one of the thorniest challenges in housing progress.
Yes, for that piece, we do have under our community's goal area outlined a number of strategies to address the housing crisis that we have in our region. And I think Elizabeth could speak more to that.
Sure. So we have a series of draft regional planning policies that have come before you that speak to housing. And what we're working on is developing implementation strategies that would be informed by the feedback we receive from the policy committees as well as through the stakeholder engagement. And so these implementation strategies can be things that we encourage partners to do or SCAG initiates to support others. But the idea is that the feedback we receive through this engagement could help identify some of those implementation strategies that would be included in the draft plan once released, in October. So that is an opportunity to consider those things as well.
Anything else, Kathleen?
Thank you. I will look forward to seeing those in the fall.
Thank you. Sunny Santa Ynez.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, okay, right.
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, I want to commend John Maris for the jersey that he's wearing. It's beautiful. There's a patch on your right sleeve. I could not identify what. Is that a flag or? John, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. Where is there a flag?
On your right sleeve. Oh, I see. Okay, all right, very good. Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. Anyway, my question
was that the Filipino flag?
Okay, now I can see it. All right, thank you so much for the presentation. My only question is, I really like what you're doing in this Connect SoCal. So my question is, will staff be available for regional presentation if one is requested? Because I really want to engage our region to be more active on this subject matter.
Yes, if there's a request, we could accommodate a presentation.
Okay, so I'll talk to our regional leader, and I think I know him. All right, thank you so much.
And if I could just chime in for a minute through the chair, I believe the Honorable Santa Ynez and Ariel Pei, there wasn't a vote casted for the consent calendar. And I noticed that you are at a notice location. So if you would like to vote on the consent calendar, we could do so now.
All right, I vote yes on the consent.
Ariel Pei, City of Lakewood, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the correction.
Wendy, did you have another question? Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item number 8, another information item, REAP 1.0, REAP 1.0 biannual program update. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any members of the public either in person or on Zoom who wish to speak to this item.
Thank you, Yvette. This is an information item. SCAG staff was awarded $47 million in 2020 by HCD to develop projects and programs to accelerate housing production throughout the region under the Regional Early Action Planning Grant. A variety of programs were developed, many of which benefit our local agencies and jurisdictions directly. Mayanne Johnson, Manager of Housing, will be providing a biannual update of the REAP 1 program to the committee. Mayanne?
Thank you, Chair Yokoyama, and good morning, everyone. I'm Mayanne Johnson, Manager of the Housing Department, and I'll be providing a brief update on the Regional Early Action Planning Grant, the first one, our biannual update. The last one I gave to this committee was in January, so I have some exciting updates to share. Just to quickly refresh your memory, REAP 1 was a one-time grant from HCD, from the state, to accelerate housing production and increase housing supply in our region, to do it from a regional angle. And so this is the first time that SCAG and our sub-regional partners have done something on this scale specifically for housing. We just did RHNA in the past, so this was a good launch for a lot of the programs that you'll also be seeing locally and through your sub-region. So $47 million we received, and so our goal and purpose to increase housing supply through planning activities. This original deadline was to spend it by the end of this year, but that was extended until the end of next year. That is HCD's expenditure date, so we do have to have projects completed before that. I'm happy to say, because we had many MOUs with our sub-regional partners and contracts, that we had to amend that extension by June 30th. And I'm happy to report that we have them all amended. Some were in by a hair, but we will have no project delays due to that. So thank you to our sub-regional partners and those who were able to help us obtain signatures to keep going. So quickly, the program areas, we divided it into 3 main program areas, and I'll go into each: partnerships and outreach, regional housing policy solutions, and SCS Connect SoCal strategies and integration. There's also other, but that's more of the administration. And of course, we did the 6-cycle RHNA a long time ago. So our largest component, the sub-regional partnership program, this represents half of our $47 million for the REAP program. We had 15 sub-regional partners, and they represent, or they're heading over 70 individual projects across the region just to increase housing supply. So this could include technical assistance for jurisdictions in preparing and implementing their housing elements, site inventory, ADU ordinances, a whole host of things that they could choose what they want to do at the sub-regional and local level. So I reported in January, there's a lot of projects that helped City of LA and the County of LA complete their housing elements. But I'm happy to report since January, we've had several projects completed. City of Palmdale Digital Utility Data Inventory Tool, which is actually the next item. So you'll be hearing more about that. County of Los Angeles parking strategies to increase housing production, and the CVAG Affordable Housing Catalyst Fund investment plan. If you're particularly interested in the CVAG projects with recently completed, we'll actually be showcasing them at our July 18th Housing Working Group meeting, which is open to the public. So they will go into more details and their best practices that came out of those strategies. Upcoming projects that we look forward to reporting on later this year and highlighting: OCOG, Gateway Cities COG, and VCOG. They created a cross-regional effort on an ADU communication toolkit and database to help their jurisdictions increase ADU development. County of Imperial Colonia's Housing Infrastructure Needs Assessment. So this project, working with in partnership, the County of Imperial, looking to increase housing for agricultural workers in less urbanized locations. SBCOG, SB 1000, Environmental Justice Toolkit, and the Westside Cities COG Subregional Affordable Housing Funding Program. I do want to highlight that last one because a common theme among our subregional partners is trying to find a long-term source of providing affordable housing. So housing trusts have been part of that conversation. So I'm happy to report not just that one, but because I really kind of ran out of room in that box. Not just Westside Cities, but the Gateway Cities COG. They created the formation of a housing trust fund, and the San Gabriel Valley COG also. They already have an established trust fund, but they established a revolving loan fund and have given out $5 million in funding to support affordable housing. And this is all from this SRP program. So just some of the highlights, and we look forward to completing more as we progress. So other partnership and outreach programs, we've done the Call for Collaboration program. This is uplifting the social equity and elevating those conversations as part of land use decision making. This was done in partnership with the California Community Foundation and matched by different partners. That was completed this year. And then we also had our Leadership Academy, in which we provided training for local decision makers on the housing crisis and how to make decisions or how to approach decisions for housing and land use. We closed that out in early 2023. Our regional housing policy solutions, so more focused on technical assistance. There's RHNA methodology, and just to note, RHNA reform was part of that, but that was taken out, and that's actually later on today's agenda. Housing element update, data and technical assistance. We are providing support for an online permitting portal with the City of Cerritos. And then there's also grant writing technical assistance. So 4 jurisdictions and 2 tribal governments are receiving direct assistance to write grants for housing supply supportive activities. I'm happy to report too that one of our cities, the seventh city receiving TA, the city of Needles, received not just a pro-housing designation, but through our program also received $445,000 for the PIP pro-housing incentive program through HCD. So that is a direct result of this technical assistance. If your city is interested, please contact me or I can connect with you after this meeting. But we still have spots open for this TA if you're interested in housing supportive grants. Other housing policy research, other to residential project, converting infill area, underutilized lands, gas stations, potential strip malls. The story map was published in early 2023. And I note here, it received the APA Los Angeles Award, American Planning Association, early this year. But as of last week, they won the state award for that. So that'll be awarded officially in Fresno at the California APA conference in September. So we have a lot of award-winning projects funded by REAP. Development streamlining, resources and training. So we had guidance documents published, and we're going to set up one-on-one meetings. And our series of workshops is also posted online. Tax increment financing strategies, we'll be having public workshops scheduled this summer. And then our housing preservation strategy. We have 3 convenings held, and we'll have two more in this year. So finally, for our Connect SoCal strategies, we have the $5 million funding for 26 projects under the Sustainable Communities Program supporting housing. Upcoming highlights are some ADU bundles. We've bundled these together to streamline the projects, but jurisdictions participating will have a variety of resources available, including model ordinance developments, technical assistance, and pre-reviewed standard plans. I also want to report for the EIFD bundle. There is an intent to form an EIFD. We're working with the city of Los Angeles. They are going to put that on a future agenda. So that is coming, and that is a big step into establishing an EIFD. And then our transit-oriented development work program. This is to increase housing production near transit stations. So LA Metro has a goal of 10,000 units around their stations. And so we've partnered with them on on 3 separate projects, but we've completed a joint development acceleration plan and the Metro Housing Dashboard. Partnering with Metrolink, we've established 9 stations have been selected to participate, so increasing housing production near these stations as well, and a real estate analysis and strategy. And I do want to note that participation has been completely voluntary, so those 9 stations are all fully participating. And then finally, we have our Transformative Climate Communities, TCC connection. So 2 cities, the city of Pomona, we've worked with them on conducting significant outreach on leveraging the areas identified under this program already awarded, and then increasing housing production in these areas. So the draft analysis has been prepared, is under review, and we hope to complete that this fall. And then finally, our Riverside TCC program. In January, I had reported that we've had several unsuccessful bids with this program, but I'm happy to say and happy to report that we had a successful bid to expedite housing applications in their TCC area. So a consultant has been selected and will be ready to kick off after the City Council approves the MOU in the middle of this month. So that was a lot of information, but if your only takeaway is we're doing a lot more things with housing, and there are now funded projects for housing on the regional level. And with that, I'd be more than happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mayan. One quick question I have is, you last gave us an update in July of 2022, last year. Why is this called a biannual update and not an annual update?
Oh, the last one was January 2023. If I said July, I misspoke.
Oh, no, the agenda report.
Oh, dear.
The agenda report says that sorry, I had it right in front of me. It says in the agenda report, it says the last update was presented to the CEHD committee at its July 7, 2022 meeting.
My apologies that I used the same template. Thank you for catching that. And I will be committed to working less late at night.
Oh, so you're saying that you're reminding us you gave us an update in January?
Yes, that was a typo on my, completely my fault.
So actually that should be a semi-annual update then, right?
Yes, if you actually look up the term biweekly, for instance, in the dictionary, I have looked this up before because I was in moot court in college, and biweekly can mean twice a week or every other week. So
It's
we're both
confusing.
correct.
Okay. All right. And also, because of the subject matter of this REAP 1.0, I do want to remind the committee members that one of our consent calendar items was item number 3, REAP 2.0 program call for applications update. And if you look at that consent calendar item, there are deadlines for the REAP 2.0 program call for applications this month of July for some of the funding in REAP 2.0 program. So let's go to the questions from the committee. I will now entertain comments from members of the CEHD committee. Frank Zeranian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayan, great. Thank you very much for the report. The EIFD issue is an important one. Are we doing any outreach to our jurisdictions about EIFD? Because as I understand it, they could be cross-jurisdictional. And as I understand it, they do not require voting if for the formation, but for the bonds, obviously required for voting. Is there any outreach that SCAG or any other institution is doing with our jurisdictions to show them a way how perhaps regionally we can use this tool in order for us to benefit from cross-jurisdictional boundaries and benefits?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. So outside of the REAP program currently, no, because those are tailored for those jurisdictions. However, we are looking at long-term because the purpose of REAP is to make sure it doesn't just gather dust, all these products that are very useful for multiple jurisdictions. So we'll be taking a lot of these best practices and toolkits made and looking at how we can use those to serve our jurisdictions, at least on the outreach and education.
And I'll talk to you offline, but I'd be more than happy to collaborate at our school to be able to outreach our communities, to be able to get this information out, because it's a great tool. I recall writing an article about it some years ago when it was new, but I've never looked at it again. It's something that we should definitely look, because the benefits of cross-jurisdictional activity could be really beneficial to some of our cities. Yes.
Thank you, Frank. Any other questions or comments from the members in person? Okay, I call on John Mirish.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Okay. My question to Mayan is, and I hope the answer is yes. As many of you know, Jed and myself serve as members of the board of LACASA, which is Los Angeles County Affordable Housing Solutions Agency, a new agency, which the state, sadly, when it created us, didn't fund at all. So my question is, I believe we're applying, but is there still time for LACASA in various ways to be able to get some funding from these grants? It's an umbrella organization for LA County. It's not a specific city, and it could also obviously serve as a model for the other counties.
Hi there, Elizabeth Carvajal here, Deputy Director. Yes, LACASA is able to apply for funding under the REAP 2.0 program, specifically our Notice of Funding Availability. That program specifically funds trust funds, catalyst funds, building business models for housing production, innovative financing strategies like EIFDs. And so that is a particular funding source that LACASA can pursue. The call is currently open and closes on July 31st. And so that is an opportunity.
Okay, and I know they're working on it. I just wanted to put a plug in. You know, I think it's important, as said, because it serves as a model for other counties too. My final point is, I noticed that there is a grant or a focus on TOD, transit-oriented development. And I just wanted to point out that there have been some articles recently where you have some prominent academics who are calling from the untethering of TOD from transit. So transit-oriented development without transit, I guess that makes it DOD, which would be developer-oriented development. I would say we should be a little bit cautious and maybe take a break or take a pause on TOD until it's clear if the transit part is going to be untethered. From my perspective, as said, the justification is it's near transit, people are going to use transit. And if that's not the case, then perhaps the money would be better spent for something like a La Casa or for other purposes as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, John. And please forward La Casa consent calendar item number 3. And just for those in attendance, John Murish was referring to Jed Liano, Claremont council member. Any other questions? Any other comments? Thank you for that information item, Mayan Johnson. Okay, we move to information item number 9. REAP 1, digitized utility inventory tool for Palmdale. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any members of the public either in person or on Zoom at this moment.
Thank you, Yvette. This is an information item. REAP funding has been supporting local governments and stakeholders with housing planning activities and projects that accelerate housing production to meet the region's 6th cycle RHNA. One such project is the digitized utility inventory tool for Palmdale, which was developed under the Sub-Regional Partnership Program. The tool utilizes a comprehensive utility data inventory and has interactive online viewing that displays built and future master planned utility infrastructure supportive of housing development in the Palmdale area. Today, Daniel Anderson, who is lead in a geospatial AI initiative at Black & Veatch Consultants, will provide an overview of the tool development and conduct a demo on how the tool can be used by planners and city staff. And he is with David Kayobi, Associate Regional Planner. I'll turn it over to David and Daniel.
Good morning. Thank you all for your time today and opportunity to share this exciting project. I'm Daniel Anderson with Black & Veatch. I work in our strategy and innovation group on advanced geospatial solutions. I live and work in SCAG territory in the Marietta area and appreciate the diligence and passion that's shown by the members today. For those of you who are not familiar with Black & Veatch, we're one of the largest infrastructure engineering construction companies in the world. Approximately 1 in 3 cell calls and 1 in 7 glasses of water drank in the US go through a facility we've worked on. We've deployed 40% of the level 2 EV charging posts in the US and enough miles of fiber to wrap around the earth twice. Black & Veatch were engaged through Southern California Association of Governments to develop a utility inventory application for the city of Palmdale. This used California's Regional Early Action Plan grant for funding. The objective of the tool is to accelerate development in Palmdale by providing developers a user-friendly interactive mapping and estimation tool. At the time we started last year, there was approximately 65% vacant land in the city, which is in northern Los Angeles County. So there's a lot of opportunity for growth, and we've worked to reduce the friction for developers by providing more accessible information. The project began in April of last year and completed on budget in June of this year. We began with a discovery phase where we reviewed all of the city's GIS architecture and data, existing planning processes, typical review comments to applications that are submitted, as well as their fee schedules. As part of the project, City of Palmdale internally aligned upgrading their GIS server, a new server installation and software upgrade. Black & Veatch had recommended implementing a web adapter, so their security, which they did do, their security is better today than it was a year ago with their GIS. And for tool development, they had to transition their key GIS services to this new server. Their existing geospatial data was very high quality. One exception that they were aware of was the stormwater pipe system. It wasn't properly digitized in the past, and we digitized over 150 miles of stormwater pipe system as part of this. And of course, the main task was the actual application development. Our goal was to make it very user-friendly and interactive, so anyone who's had experience with common web apps like Google Maps could find it accessible and useful. It utilizes the GIS layers directly from the city services, so there's not a risk of asynchronous data. When the city updates their GIS, the tool will be presenting the exact same information. And also, there's no recurring tool cost for City of Palmdale. This isn't software as a service platform. It's running as a web app on their existing servers. During our discovery phase, City of Palmdale Planning identified the most commonly asked questions by developers. The positive news is that the tool can provide information to improve each of these processes, which may help developers make more informed design decisions, reduce the number of touch points planning needs to interact with them prior to submission, and help improve application submittal quality. I'm going to show a demo today, and you'll see how the tool can help on these items. So what information are we bringing to users that's beneficial over their current processes, which are typically calling on the phone, visiting the city, or trying to pull the information themselves? Parcel information, you'll see this in the tool that users can select the parcel. It provides APN, land use, and can provide zoning. There's 10 reference layers with GIS attribute data. You can see in the image, and you'll see this in the tool, some of these examples, such as like embed depth for manhole that are in the city. The tool is very easy to incorporate other future valuable GIS reference layers by just editing a config file, a text file, so it doesn't require coding to make some improvements from here. So for example, if developers say, hey, showing street lights would be very valuable, City could just publish that as a service and edit a text file, and it'd be showing in the tool. The City of Palmdale has near map high resolution aerial imagery. You can see that in this, and you'll see it in the tool. It's much higher res than satellite. It's low Earth or aerial flights. So that can really help users review their site conditions. It has estimate calculations for sewer, manhole, and stormwater. And then finally, for people who aren't familiar with third-party utility processes for getting new services, we link to those and provide contact info to help them move forward faster. Every project isn't without its challenges, and while I don't want to focus on these, I do believe the tool is successful in providing more information. I'm going to touch on them. One of the more ambitious goals of the project was to obtain all third-party utility data within the city and provide it to developers and city planning. We reached out to the 11 utilities operating within the city with over 100 points of contact via email and phone, and no utilities were willing to share their data. So it raised the question of why. I myself used to work in land services, and I've done tasks on new site builds, including many mountaintop cell sites in California. When you reach out for a new service, you have to provide them your drawings, you pay an upfront fee, and then the utility goes and fields the site, they verify that data, and then they provide a design. So what we were asking them to fundamentally do was to change that and provide data upfront for all their territory in the city at no cost. So the utility, they may be concerned about the liability for data accuracy, security or privacy concerns, and upfront, we knew that would be the case for gas. We never intended to publish all the underground gas sewer lines publicly. What we asked the gas utility was, would they provide a service to give us distance to access a location? Also, the resources and costs to maintain this, where today, every time there's a new request, they're getting reimbursed right up front. I believe in order to really change this, there might need to be a regulatory change, which we'll talk about in the next slide. The city ArcGIS server and upgrades took longer than planned. The services weren't deployed until October 2022, which was the 6th month into the project. And there were several upgrade issues, and some of these issues weren't resolved until February. So it just left kind of 4 months left for finalizing the tool and closeout activities. We did manage to reduce that impact by providing mock-up screens and showing how the tool could work to confirm alignment early on. And additionally, like our spend over the initial months was very low, so the bulk of hours were for when the actual task could be complete. City resources was also another challenge. City of Palmdale had 2 GIS resources. One left the city late 2022 and the other retired early prior to project completion, and both of those roles haven't been filled yet. Planning provided a lot of information up front when we were doing discovery, but had limited availability, so they weren't involved throughout. So key stakeholder feedback beyond the project manager, who was very engaged, was a challenge. And then finally, most of the existing costs that the city provides are on fee schedules, and there's not really logic or calculation built into those. And a lot of the costs and requirements are determined kind of post-development advisory board review, and not at the point that the tool is going to be utilized. So they didn't really have a methodology to provide a range or estimate for some of those costs, and there wasn't resources to help develop those. So from future opportunities, the tool is providing information you'll see that gives a really good baseline to build on. And here's some of Black & Veatch's suggestions on how this could be improved further. So third-party utility data, we do believe there's an opportunity, particularly if City of Palmdale engages with some other cities who might have challenges for utility data in their border, to coordinate through SCAG to reach out to the California Public Utility Commission to show how the lack of this data impacts their city and development. Communications providers in California did this for utility distribution pole data, and the CPUC just passed a new requirement this year that all distribution pole data needs to be shared between utilities and telcos in a public database that they share. So I do believe there's an opportunity for cities that are struggling with the same challenge of third-party data to reach out to CPUC and discuss that challenge. From estimate calculation, we do recommend a development of a database of logic-based rules so you can provide fees or potential range of costs. So for example, like when might you have road improvements or landscaping or street lighting requirements that the developers could choose from a pick list and give a range of those, maybe based on the frontage of their streets or whatever makes sense. And then GIS services deployments, because of the parts that I'd mentioned, some of the layers, the city of Palmdale just passed new zoning in March, and that hasn't been deployed yet, so it should be. And also we recommended interviewing developers to see, what else may be available that the city does have access to provide. And finally, when we reviewed the planning comments from the Development Advisory Board review, there were some very common responses, and we've included some of those like common things that were missed in applications that just require resubmittals and sending back, just highlighting those in the final report. There might be some others than the ones that we've highlighted that you'll see that should be included. With that, I'm going to transition over to the demo, and I'm going to share my screen here and show that. You begin with a disclaimer here, and in that, you have to accept the disclaimer. This tool offers the opportunity to save everything you've been working on. So you can load an existing file or a new file. I'm just going to do a new file, and I'll show here the tool. So along the top, this is set up in a wizard, very similar if anyone's ever used like tax services online or other things that have a wizard. It's very similar. So like as the developer goes through and is populating information, if they skip some of it, it will show what's been missed in red here. And I'll walk through that in the end too. There's a validation in the end because they can save this file and submit it to planning to help accelerate planning's review as well. There's help right in the tool that walks through everything. We have video tutorials that break down per section, so you can just jump right ahead to what you're interested in, and other additional information that could be provided, such as like what the layers are from. What we're seeing here in pink is the city border, and we have several other layers here. One that I'd mentioned, and I'll show this when we're zoomed in too, is this near map data. You can toggle that, which is much higher resolution than just satellite imagery. We also have the water districts. This is the California Department of Water Resources published as a layer. We're pulling that directly from them, which then can identify, who is the water purveyor in my area. Airport APZ is shown, Alquist Priola zones are shown. And I'll go through the tool and kind of show some other things. And I'll just like kind of put in like I'm doing a template project or something right now, so you guys can see how this works. Thing I'm building a new retail center, and just put in this information. All the information is saved in an application that kind of can be sent to city planning again to help them review, and you can click on next step. And parcels, there's kind of multiple ways you can select parcels in the tool, and I'll show you a few of those. One is you can actually, if you know your parcel, like you've bought this parcel and you want to, you can just start to type it in and select it, and the tool will zoom into that actual like parcel area. And other options, I'll show some of the other ways. And one thing, with the AIN here, the assessor's number, you can click and it goes right through to the Los Angeles County parcel page, and I can zoom back out. And I'm going to show you some of the other methods that we can use to select parcels in the city. You can actually just kind of zoom into the map by shift clicking, and then it'll show the parcels in that area, and you can select them in a rectangular shape or individually. There's logic built in here. There's a study required if you do over 5 acres, and I'll show you that in the final report for basin study. And then you can also individually add parcels or take them out. And once they've completed doing their parcel selection, they can start to do their sewer connection, and this is pretty simple too. We can just click in the tool and double click, and you can draw either polylines or you can draw multiple lines, whichever. There's a notification, in this case across an arterial road, which may trigger some zone changes, so there's a notification there. Tool is also estimating how many manholes you need to install. Requirement is that the ingress egress at every junction and every 350 feet, so it's showing that. They can put in their cost of construction per foot. Same thing for stormwater. When I completed that step, it's gone over the stormwater step, so I can select this. And one thing kind of to point out here as well, this is very specific to this. This could be applied to, let's say, accessory dwelling units. If you have rules for accessory dwelling units, like they have to be X amount of feet away from an edge of parcel, we could have a polygon drawn in here and say, no, that's too close, you know, to help people. There's ways we could do things like that. So after they've selected and entered this is, I just selected a stormwater. I connected it to the existing stormwater line. Another thing I did not highlight, like if they want to know specifically, like, hey, what's the embed depth of this pipe here? I can click and see the manhole depth here. I can see the slope of the sewer lines, et cetera. That's an identification tool for any of the attributed data that's in the system. And then they have an option to enter in other project costs. And this is kind of where I said earlier, I think there's a real option to have some of this be more logic driven, where if you know on average for a parcel that's X size, you're required to do X amount of landscaping. If it's a retail center or something, you could do that. And then ultimately, when you're done, there's an estimate report. We can validate and save the project. In this case, I didn't have any errors, but I'm just going to show you what happens if it is an error. Like anybody that's used like TurboTax or something's very familiar with this kind of thing, where it just says like, hey, your validation failed, and it's telling you what you need to fill back out. You can go back out and fill it out. You can save when you're complete as a file, and then that file can be reloaded. It can be shared with planning. And then finally, when you're all done and you're ready to run your estimate report, you can create that. It compiles an estimate report that could be sent right to planning and used. This is like a radius map, which is part of planning requirements that's showing, you know, here are the parcels that we selected. Here's the way that is. This is disclaimer language from the city, the project info they filled out, the location. All of these assessor numbers are still like hyperlinks, so we can just go right to them. And when I mentioned that it was over five acres, the city requires they do a basin study here, and this is giving the details of what that is. It's showing their sewer connections, some notes about studies that are required, stormwater connection, their project costs that they've input here, calculated in the tool are there. And then, as I mentioned, like, so we have SCE, like some people who aren't very familiar, if you call the general SCE line and say you want new service, could be transferred quite a few times before you get to the right party. But this is giving you actually like, hey, where do I go if I'm actually doing planning and installing new service? Same thing for SoCal Gas. We have their builder services linked directly in here, which explains and walks you through what the forms are for the process. All of the water purveyors, any other information, you know, that these were very common development advisory board comments where people weren't aware of the storm drain master plan requirements or other things that they can fill in. So that is the tool. It's really been a great project, and we're proud of what we accomplished with SCAG in the city of Palmdale. It's a very unique, cutting edge tool that's very friendly to developers. And what we've established here is really a great platform that could be built upon with the proper resources so the city can make it as great of a tool as possible. It's very flexible, like I mentioned, to even adjust for other use cases. Like you could do for, you know, I heard this morning that 51% of the concern were around affordable housing. You know, this could be helping with that, with ADU development, checking is there proper zoning and clearances, et cetera, all within the tool. So I really appreciate all your time today, and I think there may be some time for questions. So I could open up to questions.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel and David. I will now entertain comments from members of the CEHD committee. All right. Thank you, John Gabbard.
Hi, Daniel. John Gabbard from Dana Point. I've built down in Palmdale a couple times. How much of the data has been verified, from manhole inverts to the calculations on slopes on the lines to the storm drains? How much of that stuff is invalidated?
So that is the existing City of Palmdale GIS data. I don't know. So if there's an insinuation, there may be some challenges with accuracy there. I don't know. I know geospatially referenced, like it's pretty high quality. The one that, again, we saw challenges with was stormwater, that the pipe system, they were aware of that. I guess the way it was previously digitized before was in CAD, and it wasn't.
Yeah, it's never a question of the horizontal location of the pipe. It's always a vertical issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's where all the problems come in. I mean,
right.
I've got a project right now that's 2 feet off of what the GIS says it is, and it screwed up sewer lines for, you know, better part of a quarter of a mile. And additionally, have you guys taken to, or have you gone to any of the engineers and gotten as-builts from any of the new projects to make sure that the data you're providing is accurate?
So as part of this project, like we were really tasked with getting the existing GIS data in there. As far as ongoing ways that the city, I believe the city has some challenges with just losing their 2 GIS resources. They have a sub-consultant. But obviously the data is only as good as what's in their system, so that it's the need to make sure that the existing as-built are updated. Current zoning is in there. And anything that is updated directly in their GIS is reflected here. But I do hear your concern. I mean, underground locates is a huge challenge everywhere.
Right.
Utility strikes, like Black and Veatch faces this problem daily. That it is
and you identified the crossing issues on all the drives is going to be a huge problem. So I would just suggest that for the second phase of this study, that you're doing, if you can go to or get a list of all of the last, 100 projects were done in Palmdale and go talk to all the engineers. There's only a half a dozen that work up there. And getting all the as-built it would be a great product to have for the development community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Thank you. Great feedback.
Thanks, John. Are there any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Okay, thank you, David and Daniel, for that presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 10, RHNA reform process updates. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, I see no members of the public either in person or on Zoom.
Thank you, Yvette. This is an information item. As you may recall, HCD is required to conduct an outreach process on RHNA reform and submit its recommendations to the state legislature by the end of this year. SCAG staff developed a set of draft recommendations on RHNA reform, and concurrently, SCAG conducted its own public engagement between May and June to receive public feedback. I had the opportunity to participate in one of the virtual listening sessions on June 27, and there were some thoughtful comments shared by the participants. This is a process update, but we will have an opportunity as a committee to discuss RHNA reform recommendations at our CEHD special meeting on August 16 at 9:30 a.m. I want to clarify to the members that there's an error in the staff report that notes that the special meeting is on August 17. As I indicated, the meeting will be on August 16 at 9:30 a.m. Maayan Johnson, Manager of Housing, will provide a brief update on participation on HCD's sounding board. Maayan?
Thank you, Chair Yokoyama. So I am back. I just talked about funding, so I'm going to talk about the not so funding side of housing. So as many of you probably participated, there was the 6-cycle RHNA, which concluded with its adoption for the SCAG region in March of 2021. So there were a lot of concerns raised, issues raised, and challenges during the 6th cycle by our stakeholders, by jurisdictions, by our committee members about how we can reform the RHNA process and make it accurate, make it more streamlined, make it more transparent. And so we have committed to doing RHNA reform as part of our housing program. Meanwhile, HCD is required by AB 101, which coincidentally funded REAP 1, but they are required to do RHNA reform at a statewide level. They're supposed to submit a letter to the state legislature by the end of this year. And so they conducted a statewide engagement process that concluded in May. That included a survey, a sounding board, which I will get to towards the end of my presentation. But this was a statewide effort rather than just focusing on SCAG. So SCAG does want to submit a comment letter on our recommendations for RHNA reform as part of their process. So comments are due in mid-September. But to get there, we obviously want to share our recommendations with our CEHD committee and then eventually our regional council for approval to submit that letter based on the approved recommendations. So that's the general process of how it fits into the statewide picture. So between May and the end of June, we had a SCAG outreach and engagement process for RHNA reform. A lot of our stakeholders were very interested in the topic. So we developed multiple ways to share comments on the draft recommendations that are currently posted online. So we had 2 RHNA reform listening sessions, as As the chair had mentioned, he participated in one of them. We had about 60 people register for one or the other, and some attended both. So we heard a variety of comments. Some were in agreement, some were in disagreement with our recommendations. I don't want to preempt any discussions for August 16th, but I want to make sure that I do acknowledge that we did receive a lot of comments. We also received comments and feedback on our recommendations through a brief survey that we had about 75 people answer. And there was more high level conceptual. So if you didn't want to get into the technical details, you could still agree or strongly disagree or anything in between on the general concepts. And then we received 2 written comment letters to our housing inbox as part of this process. So again, the next steps will be SCAG staff will review all of the comments received through our process, and then we will develop we'll hone down the draft recommendations to share with this committee for the August 16th meeting, and then it'll go to regional council in September. So that is the general process. We'll then submit those approved recommendations to HCD by mid-September. So that is our process. And then, as I mentioned, the sounding board that was created by HCD as part of their statewide engagement for RHNA reform. They invited a number of experts and as an advisory group from throughout the state. I was a representative for SCAG, but this group, it was not open to the public, but they did publish agenda items online prior to the meeting. And so I gave brief updates on what was discussed. The last one on June 5th did discuss things such as a connection to the Connect SoCal plan and also a few things about climate change. So again, as your representative at SCAG, not wanting to preclude your discussions at CEHD, I just emphasized the need for transparency, fairness, and a streamlined, expedited process just to make it a lot easier to go through. And so at the June 1st meeting that you had, it was requested by this committee to share the concern shared. I know there was extensive discussion, namely that the committee or the advisory board was not open to the public, and that there should be more representation from other groups such as homeowners who were not, as far as I know, were not invited to sit at the table. And so I did share these concerns at the committee. It was towards the end of the agenda because I wanted to make sure that this was heard as its own item. And then HCD's response was that it was, they thanked us for the comment, and then indicated that they would note that in their notes. So it wasn't a lot of feedback provided there, but I did provide those concerns as shared by this committee. So with that, I'd be more than happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mayan. I will now entertain comments from members of the CEHD committee. John Mirish.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Mayan, for letting them know our perspective, not just of me, I think of many people in terms of the transparency. I don't think that it can be overstated that having these meetings behind closed doors certainly does nothing to elevate the public level of trust. Excluding major stakeholders such as resident groups and homeowner groups does nothing to elevate the level of trust. Again, I will make the point that you mentioned that they talked about climate change. Again, very important, but the larger issue is also important, and I will keep suggesting, especially since Earth Overshoot Day, Ecological Overshoot Day is August 2nd. And finally, I think from my perspective, and we'll discuss it, I guess, next month, that the most important thing is changing RHNA from what has become a blunt, punitive instrument to go back to what it originally was, which was a planning tool. And that, from my perspective, is that's what we'll discuss. But thank you for letting them know. It sounds like they didn't, they may have gone in one ear and out the other. But that's okay. We'll have our discussion next month, and I look forward to it. And thank you again.
Thank you, John. Honorable Tanya Doby.
Thank you. And this is my very first meeting, so forgive me if I don't know exactly how this works yet, but I have a very specific question, and that's why I needed to be at this table, because I'm a small city and my issues are not like everybody else's. But is there anywhere that we can drop a little pin in the effect that ALUC can have on an approved housing element if they do not agree after it's been approved? Like my city specifically is at risk of losing our approved housing element if we do not overrule ALUC. And does anybody in here know who ALUC is? That's fantastic. So I really am looking for, because I've talked to folk at HCD and I've talked to the governor's people, and most folk don't even know who this commission is. Their Airport Land and Use Commission. And with their antiquated ways of deciding where building can happen, I will lose my approved housing element if I don't overrule them. And their answer to me was, just overrule us. So, baby, I'd laugh too if it wasn't real. So is there, like, is there somewhere that I can throw me in there?
Sure, and I'm glad you brought that up. So we did look into the Airport Land Use Commission. Every county, well, it depends on the county, but Orange County does have one of their own. And so it depends, your local airport would be different than those next to John Wayne, for instance. So there are different interactions. Your neighboring, yes, where there's, sure. Yeah, it's much different than someone living next to a commercial airport. So we are looking into that issue, although it may be outside of RHNA itself where we determine the need for RHNA, and it may be more of a housing element issue because it has to do with finding the sites and then having another agency comment on them with a risk of losing those sites to be able to plan for housing. So we are looking into that, and we can certainly look at it and how it could fit with RHNA reform, but there is a possibility that might be more impactful if we have it as part of SCAG's long-term housing element reform. But we do want to work with you and others experiencing that particular issue. So I'm sorry I don't have an answer for you today of, yes, it fits right in there, but we will discuss on how we can fit it.
Thank you for that question, Tanya. Wendy Bucknam, please.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that the staff information does include an update on the concerns that were raised at our June meeting, a June 1st meeting, and the lack of transparency with HCD's closed meetings of its sounding board group. And I'm sounding board in quotes, which I understand has met in May and June to advise and provide direct feedback on various concepts being presented by HCD on the RHNA reform. The staff report does say that SCAG staff, and thank you, Mayan, for also preempting what my question is. You actually gave the answer, but I have to share. I really, really appreciate that the concerns were raised and that were voiced by this group resoundingly by many in this group at our and that they were raised at that June 5th meeting, and that these were noted by HCD staff. I understand you probably can't elaborate because it doesn't sound like they gave you much more feedback than that, but I wonder if any other conversations took place surrounding that. And if was there any recognition at all that the conduct of the closed meetings and excluding this valuable information and input from key stakeholders that weren't invited to the table, was there any acknowledgement of that, or that there would be a process that would change in the future, et cetera, that you might be able to elaborate on further? Thanks.
Sure. There wasn't, thank you for that question. There weren't any further discussion or comments on that. There were some nonverbal faces because there are not just COGS on the committee, but there are other groups represented on the sounding board. So nothing verbal, no commitment from HCD, and HCD was neutral, if you will. Just noting that they would comment or note the comment.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Thank you. I find it really disingenuous considering the amount of transparency that they insist upon in our housing element development, that same thing would not be afforded and be set as an example by them. I'll just leave it at that.
Any other questions from the committee members? Yeah, I share, I and other members at our June CEHD meeting, I share in the concerns that were repeated by Wendy and John today, including, issues of transparency. I asked at last month's meeting, are they going to be posting the minutes of the sounding board meetings?
We did ask for that again. I wasn't the only person on the sounding board that did ask. And unfortunately, they did not, they didn't say they would publish it, but they would share their findings. But that doesn't quite include the minutes. So it's a bit vague in their response.
And like you mentioned previously, were they going to disclose the invitation list?
They have not done so, and I can follow up with that too, whether or not they'll disclose that.
Did they disclose the attendance list?
They didn't do that either. They did have emails, like a reply all to just sending the agendas to the group, but I wouldn't be able to identify if those particular individuals were designated or if they were specifically invited to the group.
Okay. Wendy, did you have another question?
Yes. You know, a little angel just tapped on my shoulder and gave me an idea for all of the folks that are on this call, and that is to have our state legislative representatives send a letter to HCD, which I will be embarking upon with both my senator and assembly person. So I will be going ahead and doing that. I encourage everyone else to do the same thing to bring transparency to HCD, and I'll have them send a letter to them. So I encourage others to do the same.
Thank you for that comment, Wendy. Any other questions? Lucy Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was the little angel that tapped on Wendy's shoulder because I was former state HCD director, and I know that whenever we got a letter from a state legislature, that our office jumped. So I agree with Wendy that I think it might be impactful if each of your legislators from your cities would send in a note to HCD and remind them that transparency is important and mold gets killed by sunshine.
Joseph Morabito, thank you.
And I like that idea of writing in the letters. So if there's a way to send us an email sort of as a reminder, I don't really have my note-taking capacity here that I'll actually remember later. So that'd be great.
Yeah. So I hear in our meeting room, I hear committee members mentioning the word template. And one thing I'm thinking of is I'd love it. I'm respectfully requesting, Wendy, if you wouldn't mind CCing or copying SCAG or the CEHD committee with the letter you've already mentioned you're working on as one example of a template.
Sure.
Any other thoughts?
Happy to.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Happy to do that.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Any other thoughts on that, Elizabeth?
No, nothing to add to that, as long as the template, I believe, is coming from the members.
That's correct, Elizabeth.
And any thoughts on that, Lucy?
No,
That's correct. It's better when it comes from individual cities. Yeah. Don't torture poor SCAG.
I agree with that. David Shapiro.
Just briefly, I think that's a great idea as far as templates go, but each individual city, region, COG may have different takes, different ideas, different thoughts. So hopefully we can have something that's a little more usable, or that we might all be able to use and put our own personal touches or important issues for our region, our city, our organization we're representing.
Yes, and ultimately providing the information to our state representative, right, Lucy?
Correct.
So that we can get a letter from them to HCD.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's the key is the letter doesn't come from the city. The city asks its state representative to write the letter to HCD, because having your legislator speak, that agency is supposed to respond to the legislator. Yeah.
Thank you. Rocky Roads.
Just a question about the August 16th meeting. Is there a block of time, Alec? I got a start time. Is there a block of time that we should be expecting?
It's 9:30 to 12.
Till 12. Okay, thank you.
If I may, Yvette Messi as Government Affairs Officer, that is the slated time, but we're actually adding a SCAG one-on-one presentation / CEHD Know Your Role by the request of the chair, which he will go over momentarily. So we're hoping to add half an hour to an hour to that.
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you for that question, Rocky. All right, Mayan, thank you.
Thank you.
We are done with our information items. So we will now move to the chair's report. I would like to welcome our new members. I would like to welcome the following members to the CEHD committee. Transferring from EEC, we have SCAG Second Vice President Cindy Allen, Long Beach, RC District 30. We have Camilo Garcia of Calexico joining our committee with Imperial County Communities of Concern appointment. I'd like to say welcome again to Tanya Doby, new member from Los Alamitos, OCCOG. And we have another new member, Mary Solario from San Fernando Valley COG. Welcome, new members. And we have from the city of Dana Point, RC District 12, Councilmember John Gabbard. Welcome, John. I would also like to thank the following members for all of their work as members of the CEHD committee. Thank you for your service and we wish you the best. Thank you to Adele Andrade Stadler, who is transferring to TC. She's from Alhambra, RC District 34. And thank you to Ramon Castro of Brawley, Imperial County, Communities of Concern. I want to remind the members that, as mentioned, that the CEHD committee will have a special meeting on August 16 at 9:30 a.m. I invite you all to attend in person, as the last item on our agenda will be a SCAG 101 presentation. Members will have an opportunity to learn about SCAG and our role as CEHD members. SCAG will also be providing lunch, Mendocino Farms lunch. To those of you who join us in person, staff from the clerk's office will contact you to confirm your remote or in-person participation. And now I turn it over to the staff report from Yvette Macias.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yvette Macias, Government Affairs Officer. Just two brief reminders. Greenprint Technical Advisory Committee. The first TAC meeting is scheduled for July 26th from 2 to 5 p.m. The second will be on August 28th, and we anticipate scheduling the third for the second week of September. A reminder that our regional council is dark in August. However, our committee, as the chair mentioned, will be meeting for a special CEHD meeting. But after that meeting, if you sit on the regional council, you can go ahead and head home. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Yvette. And I just feel like I want to mention again that the final item on our special meeting in August is a SCAG 101 presentation that will include our role as CEHD members. So it's a kind of a special item. So while it's I think it's going to be informative and helpful, especially for the newer members. It is the meat of the meeting will be before that. The important reasons we're meeting in August will be before that item. So we're all of you are busy, and I just wanted, for those of you who have an interest or a refresher in a SCAG 101 overview that includes your important roles as CEHD members, that will be the final item on our CEHD special meeting in August. Any announcements from our committee members? Please, any announcements? Anybody out there virtually? I look forward to your participation, my fellow members, at next month's special CEHD meeting on Wednesday, August 16 at 9:30 a.m. This meeting is now adjourned. Have a great day.